we're about 2 past, so I'm going to kick us off. As I said, I'm Michael from Justuno. I am not a PPC pro or expert, and that is why I brought together Josh, Sophia, and Frederick today to deliver the expertise. They are the pros, and I'm just moderating today. But yeah, today, 2022 paid media panel. This is session 1, which will run for about 25 minutes or so. And this first session is all about automation and new opportunities. We have some great questions for the panelists here, and so we're going to just sort of dive right in. But first off, some quick logistical things. One, this webinar will be recorded for everyone, and it will be sent out tomorrow to all registrants. If you have to hop early, if you can't make the second session, or if you know someone that couldn't make it, no worries. We'll be sending that out tomorrow, along with more information about all of our awesome partners here today. As I said, this is session 1, and session 2 will be starting at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. That'll be featuring Zach from Justuno, Andreas from Reviews, and Carolyn from U6. However, this is session 1, and today we're joined by Josh from Tenuity, Frederick from Optimizer, and Sophia from Aceable. Starting off with you, Josh, if you want to give a quick intro about yourself and Tenuity, and we'll move on to the other panelists.
Of course. So hey everyone, my name is Josh. I'm a senior strategist working within paid search at Tenuity. I've been with the company for just under 5 years now. I've been working in paid search for about 7. I've worked across multiple agencies. I've spent some time in-house at some of the nation's biggest retailers. So a lot of different experience to bring to the table. Today, I focus mostly on B2B advertising, also some consumer-facing ads as well. But yeah, that's a little bit about me, and happy to be here and chat with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. And Frederick.
Hey, okay, I'm not muted. I'm usually muted, so that's usually the first chance people have to take a shot when that happens. But I'm Frederick, or Fred Valle, so I'm the CEO and co-founder at Optimizer. Worked at Google for about 10 years back in the early 2000s. I was one of the first 500 employees there. Really happy to be doing a webinar, and let's get as much in as we can in 25 short minutes.
Sweet. And Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I work at a company called Aceable currently as a paid media strategist for one of their verticals. Prior to Aceable, I was at an agency for about 2.5 years, and now continue to do consulting for PPC as well on top of Aceable. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. Sweet. Alrighty. Yeah, and as Fred said, 25 short minutes, so we're going to dive right into the panel. So as I said, this session is talking about automation and new opportunities. So I remember reading, articles at the beginning of this year about, changes that are expected for 2022 and what to expect, local targeting, flywheel versus funnel, machine learning, optimizations, iOS updates, of course, third-party cookies. There's a lot to be covering, and we're definitely not going to cover all of it now. However, within this subset, I think we can cover a lot of ground. However, to kick us off with this topic, Frederick, I wanted to ask if you could give us like a broad view of the landscape. Where does automation stand within the paid ads landscape?
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's the big question, right? So I wrote 2 books on the topic, so about 500 pages if people really want to jump in. But this whole automation thing has been going on for a number of years, and every year more and more of the things that we used to manage manually are becoming automated. And so the way that I look at it is we're moving to the periphery of the ad system when it comes to optimization, right? There's still a lot of things we can do. And it's very clear that humans plus machines are better than the machines alone, and they're also better than humans alone. And the people on this call today, they may fall in a couple of different camps, right? Love automation and use only automation, or they hate automation, don't use any of it. But I think that sweet spot in the middle, where you bring your human intelligence, your ability to contextualize things, you bring that to the machines, you can make the machines better. And so one of the big topics for me is about automation layering. It's about taking the best in class Google capabilities. They're really good at machine learning. They've invested a ton of money in it. They do it better than anyone. But if we can take simple automations on top of that to control those machines from Google, because I think that's ultimately the frustration that we have, is losing control. When we know certain things, we already know them. The machine learning would eventually learn it, but why are we letting it spend $10,000 to get there when I could have told you that and saved my client $10,000, right? So I think those are a couple of the big points about automation.
So almost like a over automation point right now, where like they are almost imposing it in a way, when perhaps I'm just riffing off of it to making sure I understand as well. Sophia or Josh, what do y'all think?
Yeah, I think Frederick did a nice job of kind of laying out where we stand today and a lot of the frustrations that many advertisers have. We have long histories of being able to optimize certain things, then those controls are starting to go away and new things are coming into play. Sort of the way that we think about optimization and performance is also changing a little bit because of the focus areas. So a good example is, keyword level performance trends. That's something that, people have focused on a lot. The way that match types work with each other and the way that campaigns are organized around match types is another best practice that has recently evolved. So, if you were in doing SEM, even just maybe 3 years ago, broad keywords were very scary. And I think for a lot of advertisers today, they still remain to be pretty scary. But there are a lot of opportunities with, sorting to get some experience with some of the enhancements that Google has made. Again, broad keywords being another example there, where there's just additional signals that they are providing with smart bidding when you use these kinds of keywords. So the optimizations you're doing are changing. I think negative keyword management becomes even more important than it was before. But the way that we think about negative keywords, for example, is also changing a little bit. A lot of advertisers used to do match type funneling with negative keywords. Now Google is sort of recommending that you keep all of your match types within one campaign. They've even pushed several of our clients to run broad match only campaigns and exclude exact and praise, which is something that a lot of people are really nervous about. But again, I think it just goes back to, sort of what Frederick was saying about layering different pieces of automation onto the account, using tools like Optimizer or others to ensure that you're still getting all the insights that you need that are available. And, just testing and learning. I think that's always sort of been what PPC is about, and that I don't think that will ever go away. It's just sort of the way that we look at the data is going to change, and automation is obviously a big part of that.
I think the only other thing I would add to like high level viewpoint is piggybacking off of that, just making sure you're continuously testing. Just because something didn't work in the past for your company, these automation tools are being constantly updated. And I think it's really important to keep revisiting things and trying it with new layers of various automation points or data that you've garnered off of your client for the past. And yeah, just revisiting, retesting.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a really cool point that Google made at their Google Marketing Live, which was that their the TensorFlow systems that handle the machine learning, they had a 10x improvement or in capability in a single year. And usually in machine learning, we look at doubling of computing speed every 18 months, right? But they 10x'd it in a single year. And so that really speaks to the fact that, hey, if you didn't get results last year, could have been for some of the reasons that Sophia said, where maybe you needed to test different things. Could also be that the machines are now much more capable and will actually do a much better job, right? So keep iterating. And like Josh was saying too, it's all about experimentation and testing. And then a final point that I want to add on this was when Josh was saying, like when Google says jump all in on broad match is basically an automation. It's about figuring out what are quote unquote same meaning searches that people do. you can't go with that by itself. You also have to do automated bidding at the same time, because if you're not automating bidding, but you're letting Google automate the targeting, then these two systems don't really work in conjunction. They're going to overpay significantly for some really low value queries. And that's again where the frustration comes in. But if you put all the right pieces together, then it's actually quite good at saying, well, okay, this is kind of related, but not exactly. But let's try it, but let's maybe bid 5 cents instead of $1 for it. And
Right.
that's totally fine, right?
Well, so actually a question just came in from the chat that I think is pretty applicable here, and it's from Natasha, and they wanted to know, what about the way you are looking at data is changing? Like, how is the way you're looking at data changing? For example, how and when do you know if you have enough data for a test to make an informed decision? Has that changed? And how has that approach changed, if it has? This
So
goes
the
to
amount, I would say the amount of data is not necessarily what has changed, but just the way that we look at data and interpret that data. So again, for example, as Frederick mentioned, like, yes, I wouldn't recommend that folks use broad match keywords solely without smart bidding also being a component of that campaign. That's really where the benefits come in, is when you marry those two things together. The amount of data, how do you know when you have enough data? I would, just fall back on statistical significance. Hopefully that's something you can achieve within your budget. That's not always the case for some advertisers who maybe have limited budget. You may run tests. You may only have $2,000 to allocate to a testing budget. You run a test, variations A and B are looking pretty similar, nothing statistically significant. And that is a challenging scenario to be in for an advertiser. So, sometimes you do have to fall back on your instincts and just kind of your own prior experience and looking at the metrics to make an informed, decision there as best you can. But typically I try to fall back on statistical significance, and there are a lot of free resources out there to kind of help you plug that in and see, if something is statistically significant or not. Even Google Ads campaign experimentation tool will provide those, deltas and things within their own A/B testing tool. There's free websites where you can plug in data and, understand if this is a significant change from, something that you did in one of those two variations. So that would be sort of what I would outline there. And then for the second question around, is there a minimum amount you think you should be invested in testing? It really depends on your budget and how much, appetite your company has for testing, other decision makers involved in the process. But generally, just as a rough guideline, I would want to allocate at least somewhere around 10 or 20% of my overall performance media budget to testing, if that is a way to look at it.
Okay, great. And I think this is a good segue, I think. But into like the restructuring of existing campaigns with some of this in mind, how does what have y'all seen in terms of the campaign restructuring and the interplay here, if any?
So I could jump in a little bit on this. It's been a struggle, I could say, for Aceable to get fully automated and utilizing smart bidding. And so we've seen a lot of the need to shift to testing broad keywords with our various automation that we're utilizing. Similarly, trying to shift away from more mono keywords ad groups to give the algorithm a little bit more data to operate off of. So I think it's going to depending on how your account is taking to the automation or things you're trying to test. But there's definitely the potential that you're going to need to restructure or shift the strategies that you've been using. A lot of things that were best practice when I came into the industry are kind of flipped and inverse now, and we're doing it completely different things. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just typing an answer to someone, but it was a little bit long, so I'll chime in here too, though. When it comes to structures, Google really has this push for combine everything into a single campaign because it makes the machine learn better. but it's kind of tricky, right? The machine actually learns from the conversion event, and conversion events, as you all know, they can exist at the MCC level, the account level, or the campaign level. So that is one control that you have to say, how broadly should one campaign learn from a different campaign, or one account from even a different account? And then don't just do what Google says, but think about, okay, if I were to split my campaign into multiple campaigns, what is it that I could bring to the table that the Google machine learning may not be able to do, right? And it could be something as simple as messaging. If you're going to be selling camping gear in the Northeast versus the south of the country, one place it's cold half of the year, the other place it's usually not that cold. So you may have different behaviors, right? So you put different ad text in place, and that helps the right people see the right message, which is still a big part of marketing. And the machines will handle the targeting and the broad match keywords and the smart bidding, but you at least take back some control over the message. Now, to do it purely because you think you can set different bids for these different regions and you can outsmart the machine, that's usually not going to work, right? But there are many things that you could actually still bring to the equation that are going to make the results better.
Yeah, I would just add to that I think, with all of the changes that have been happening, from loss of, tracking and mobile devices with iOS 14.5, big challenge for apps, the cookie deprecation that continues to get postponed is, presenting the same sort of challenge to all advertisers. And so while we might not be able to get in as many technical details with bids and splitting things out this way versus that way, and we're sort of forced to rely on the Google automation for some of those things, due to the performance uplift that most advertisers see by relying on that automation. It does still bring a renewed focus to creative. And I think that's going to be something that continues to be where marketers can add value, is through creative segmentation, creative strategies, and creative optimization. So those are things that we've really been focused on, as more and more of the sort of bid setting and, performance analysis is still important. But with a lot of the optimization happening by machines, the creative is one area that I think humans will always be in control over. So getting more experience with creative testing and optimization, and being able to extract insights out of your ad performance and tie them back to creative differences, I think is going to be something that will always be a strong skill set for a marketer to have in the years to come.
And I agree with that broad point, but my mind has just been blown by the capabilities of OpenAI and GPT-3 and DALL-E. So these are the automated systems that can now generate images in 30 seconds. You can tell it what it needs to show you an image of. And you get the license to that image, and it's fantastic. I can use this in my ads now. And it makes it so you don't have to hire a professional photography crew. You can just tell it, these are the types of images I want. And every week you have new ones, and it doesn't cost that much. 2 years ago, I didn't think we'd be at this stage, but here we are. Right. But I think the humans are still going to, like Josh is saying, have to direct the machines in terms of what is it that you should generate images and text of.
All right. Well, I think this is actually a great segue. So we have a couple minutes left here, and I wanted to touch on the upcoming holiday season. So what we've already seen, what we have been seeing, but especially as we go into Q4 this year, which the past 2 years have already been pretty unique years as far as they come. But I think what I've been reading and hearing is that this year especially is quite different. So I wanted to dive into a little bit, lean into the optimizations that can be made with the holiday season in mind, especially any actual tips here. But to really start this off, what do you think is essential for brands to know, or for people to know, as we head into Q4 of this year, as we're only about a month away now?
Hey, according to Costco, Christmas is here. The decorations are already there. Crazy. And sorry, I'll just start, okay? But I think it's very inventory focused. So over the past couple of years of craziness in the world, getting the right inventory in the right place at the right time has been difficult. And so now we're seeing that there's too much inventory in sporting goods stores and athletic apparel. And so they're having a hard time clearing that out to make room for the season, the Christmas sales that they want to do. And so I think it's just having some, again, automation layer where your inventory is correctly fed into Google Ads, right? This is the inventory I really want to push through PPC. And this is the inventory that I have so few digital cameras, for example, that they're going to sell themselves. I don't need to spend money on that. But this is the stuff I need to clear out. And sort of bringing that business intelligence into the equation. And that then again speaks about structure, right? Like, so which product listings are you going to put into a Performance Max campaign? And how is that tied back to your business goals? So I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity this season.
Okay. And Sophia, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I mean, my main thing is plan ahead. I mean, if you're starting to plan this week, you're too late, to be frank. And in the regards of automation, I think it's really important to be cognizant of any sort of spikes that you anticipate to be happening. Make sure that you're layering in seasonality adjusters so that you're not throwing off your algorithm as you move out of these periods. And then similarly, if you're trying to move into new social channels, programmatic channels to expand your message base, you should be starting to test it with your evergreen messaging as soon as possible. For example, I know we're trying to get TikTok up and running by next week so that we can have a good understanding of what our audiences are going to look like, and where our messaging is going to be received best when we get into Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
Yep, and I would just quickly add that I think Frederick may have touched on this a little bit in his response as well. With everything that's happened since COVID-19, there's been a lot of impacts on the economy that have, translated into the different consumer trends, right? So traditionally, as you move into holiday, everybody's sort of really putting all their bets on the Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that whole holiday week. Since COVID, we've seen that people are trying to secure, whether it's gifts or whatever it might be, they're trying to do their shopping earlier in the season. So when we have promos and things like that for clients, we tend to see the first day of those promos be really strong. And then sometimes they'll fizzle out. You'll see like a big bump on the last day of the promo typically as well. But demand seems to have been pulled forward a little bit by what's happened with everything over the last couple of years in the global economy. Amazon also having Prime Day in October, I think, has had an impact on the way that some of this stuff has shifted. So people are just getting wanting to get the holiday shopping done earlier than they have historically, which is something that I would, just consider when you're planning your holiday strategy as well. I think, Black Friday and Cyber Monday are always going to have their place, but the sales that your business drives might not be as dependent on those 2 days as they have in the past. At least that's something that we've seen with some of our clients.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Thanks, Josh. We have just a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we hit as many questions as we can. So if you have any questions for our panelists, what we're going to do, I'm going to give them all one more question, and then as we transition to the next session, panelists, if y'all want to stay on and just continue answering questions in the chat, and maybe provide an email if there are any more questions and people want to ask more. But to close us out, I was hoping to learn maybe just one, your top actionable tip, the most important thing, the most important consideration, or even if there's a website or service that you highly recommend for people that are looking to get prepared. If something along those lines. And Frederick, if you want to kick us off there as well, just like one top
Sure.
tip, one thing.
Well, is there any tool out there?
Yeah.
Sure. No, but honestly, I mean, so the machines are doing so much now and they're doing a relatively good job, but there's always these outliers. So I would say going into yet another unpredictable holiday season, just make sure that you've got good alerts set up and that you've set safeguards. Your bumpers at the bowling alley, right? Put your bumpers in place so that when that automation kind of goes a little bit off course, you'll know, or you'll automatically bring it back to where it needs to be. So that's kind of my number one tip for the rest of 2022.
Thanks, Frederick. And Sophia?
Pretty similar, I would say, having contingency plans. That's been crucial for us for the past few sales we've done. There's no real blueprint from the last 2.5 years to rely off of. So we like to be able to react to either our consumer demand or competitor behavior. Sales have started earlier, gone on longer, or also been cut short. So we like to be able to react to what's happening in the market, essentially.
Yeah, so high adaptability and rapid
Yeah.
changes. Cool, especially in the holiday season. Cool. Josh?
Oh man, I think they did a really good job of, like, obviously having contingency plans and setting your guardrails is super important. And also, I would say, just be prepared for things not to go as planned, which is pretty much saying the same thing that Frederick and Sophie had already said. We are in unpredictable times, and things tend to, change very rapidly. So if things don't go as planned, you don't want to be caught freaking out or anything. Just kind of, as best you can, expect for the unexpected and see, if you have certain systems in place like alerts, which can be automated through, a tool like Optimizer, or using, email alerts from scripts in your accounts to send things to you. There's even tools like Zapier where you can automate things into a Slack channel. So you have like team visibility across an account that you're managing. I think visibility into real-time performance is really important. We'll often use an hourly spend tracker for a lot of our campaigns, so we can see intraday like how things are performing, if we need to make changes based on day over day pacing and things like that. That's not something I'd recommend people are doing all of the time, but during these really peak moments like holiday, it is important to have a really real-time focus on what's happening in the account. So anything you can do to kind of set up that and making sure that you have that visibility is key.
Visibility. Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Frederick. Thank you, Sophia. All right, I think that's a great way to wrap up this first session of the panel. I want to give a huge thank you to our awesome panelists. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate y'all coming. If you want to say a quick bye, yes, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Sweet.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Everyone.
Thanks, y'all. All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, and then so everyone in the audience, session 2 will be starting in about 3 or so minutes. We're gonna get the other panelists in here, and we should get going in just a few minutes. Go and grab some water, grab a snack, whatever. Additionally, if you have any more questions for the previous sessions panelists, I'll be including their contact information in the email recording tomorrow. So just stay tuned there. And if you have additional questions, I'm sorry we didn't get to them, but I promise they will get answered. So yeah, I will see y'all in just a few moments as we get the other panelists live. Right. Sweet. Hey, Andres.
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Good. Got Zach. We'll just get Carolyn in here. All right, about 12:30. So I gave the audience a quick minute break, got some water. I'm sure their heads were hurting because there's just so much information, just so fast in the last session. Just kidding. But it was a fantastic first session. I do wish we could go a little bit longer, but I know this session is going to go great, and we have a lot to discuss as well for this. So once we get Carolyn in here, we will get started. In the meantime, Zach will tell you hilarious dad jokes. I'm just kidding.
Wish I knew more. All I've got is the kids, no jokes.
Why did the junior marketing manager get into display ads? If anyone can get the answer right in the chat, I'll give you a $5 Stop gift card.
Oh man. I have
Why
no
did the
idea.
junior marketing manager get into display ads?
Hit me with it?
They wanted to make a lasting impression.
The last thing, yeah, that's it.
All right.
That's a good one.
We've got a pretty cringy one if you want to hear it.
I'm all for it, please.
What's a pirate's favorite metric? CTR.
That's good.
CT.
Actually. What's a movie director's favorite piece of a search ad? The call to action.
There you go. That's a good one to get it started.
All right, from the audience, what's a pirate's favorite letter?
Going R.
R? I don't know. I'm gonna guess R. Stu, tell us what it is. P, it's an R with the leg missing. That's
There it is. Oh, that one was a good one. That was a boomerang effect.
That's pretty
Stu
good.
nailed that one.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Oh
Hey,
my
Galen.
gosh, I am so sorry, guys. Can you believe? Look at this airplane hangar of an office I'm in over here in Playa Vista. The internet doesn't work great here. It's like
Oh wow.
I'm required to come into work, and yeah, I just did a takeover of my colleague here's laptop, thinking I would have to use hers because
Wow.
something's a bit buggy. But apologies.
No,
I'm here.
no worries. Thank you for still joining us. I'm sorry that happened. That's 2022.
Yeah, these things happen. It's when you're not working from home.
Well, great. Well, thank you for joining. We can kind of hop right in. We just wrapped up session 1. Now this is session 2, and this session will be all about emerging platforms, especially like TikTok, and then tech stack integrations. So we're just quick intros. Today we're joined by Andreas, Zach, and Carolyn. Carolyn, if you want to kick us off, who you are and where you're from.
Sure. I'm Caroline Spence. I'm a senior director of paid social over at Mute 6 in LA. So I've been working here for about 6.5 years with mostly D2C brands in the paid social space. So mostly Facebook and Instagram, so Meta, and Pinterest, Snap, and TikTok, which I'm sure we'll talk a fair bit about today.
Awesome.
Nice to see you all.
Thanks, Carolyn. And Zach.
Hey everyone, my name is Zach Bailey. I'm the lead partner strategist here at Justuno. I help agencies, direct-to-consumer, e-commerce brands with all things conversion related and CRO related. List growth, helping accounts reduce items being left in cart, just really figuring out how to make your on-site messaging impactful so that you can gather as many conversions as possible, right? It's our favorite word around Justuno.
Conversion. Yes, sir. All right, and Andres.
Hey everybody, my name is Andreas. I'm from reviews.io. I manage agency partnerships with Reviews, and I've kind of done a little bit of everything here, but I essentially help agencies to help their mostly D2C brands collect reviews, also on the side of collecting some UGCs, building out strategies with that, and then also how to integrate reviews with kind of like their current ads, Google, which we're going to cover a lot of that here today.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Andres. Sweet. All right, let's dive right in then. So yes, Paid Media 2022. The audience has already heard me talk for a full 30 minutes. I promise I'm going to shut up very soon. So I'm going to kick us off with Carolyn, and I just wanted to get your take on how you feel about the current landscape of paid and of emerging platforms. What you've been seeing with Meta, Instagram, TikTok and otherwise?
Oh, I think we've seen, probably over the last year or so, the rise of TikTok. It's really, I would say, eating the lunch a little bit of Meta and YouTube. Now, it reminds me a lot of the early days of Instagram in that it doesn't quite have the same sort of monetization that we see on Meta. We see, better conversion rates generally through those platforms than through TikTok right now. But TikTok does have the benefit of lower CPMs. I think there's a lot more engagement with content on that platform as well than people are just spending more time on there. And we're also seeing that there's great Gen Z potential on that platform. But it does remind me of the early days of Instagram. 6 years ago, I think I was having a lot of conversations with clients who were wondering or wanting to know how they could break into Instagram and find new audiences and new customers on the platform. And I was just finding myself in a lot of conversations where I was saying, it's just not a very high converting platform. It's more, it's dominating maybe a small percentage of the overall spend. Facebook is really still where people are used to doing their shopping. And that really changed in about a year. We saw suddenly a huge shift to people not just using Instagram, but also using it as a shopping platform. So I think I'm pretty bullish about TikTok, and that's where I think I see us going in the next year. I think people will get used to using it to shop and discover new products. But right now, I think it's just kind of disrupting the viewership of Meta and YouTube. So I'm excited. I'm sort of excited to see where it goes in the next year.
Awesome. Zach, what's your take on things?
My take always goes kind of back to the foundations of marketing and understanding your audience, right? And understanding that the TikTok audience is traditionally a little bit younger. So that's going to help you as a brand and as a marketer understand that you've got an opportunity, right? Always look at those changes as opportunities to say, here, maybe my content should be shifted, should be more personalized towards the younger generation, images, videos, GIFs, being more honest. There's reports that are showing that people are much more likely to engage with the new brand if they can understand that they are being trustworthy and honest. The younger generation is really looking for things that are sustainable. So you've got to understand that when you're on a different platform, do right by your accounts and do right by yourself as a business owner to understand how that message should be delivered to that audience. That's going to really help increase your engagements there. And also thinking differently about what are the outcomes, just like Caroline had mentioned. TikTok might not be the best as far as conversions, but what are our goals here? If we're getting engagements, ultimately that's brand awareness. But that's pretty much how I'm feeling currently about TikTok.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you made great points, and I think it's a really good option as well for big brands who are maybe, they've invested a lot in certain channels and they're looking for new areas and new audiences to get into, and maybe the customer acquisition cost of that TikTok user is going to be higher, but for the longevity of the business and the growth and scale of the business, it's important to sort of find their footing on the platform now. So yeah, it's an interesting space.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to dive in here, but I want to give a quick chance for Andreas. What have you seen? What are you feeling about the current landscape?
Yeah, I mean, really just agreeing, kind of adding on to what Zach and Caroline said. Our reviews.io, with our clients, we see a very high demand now for UGC collection tools, which kind of just ties into everything related to Instagram and TikTok, because so much UGC is already created there. And, a lot of brands are surprised too, even by just the sheer amount of content that they get from that oftentimes is just free. Because you have customers who just want to make posts about you, just want to show it off. Maybe they're not necessarily trying to give a shout out to your brand. They're not necessarily trying to make money off of you, but they're willing to do that. And Zach really hit it on the nail when he mentioned it really caters to a younger audience. They want that authenticity. personally, I'm 24 years old. I'm not 18, but I know that when I'm doing some online shopping, when I have that UGC content there, and just seeing how somebody's, interacting with something that they're using, even if it's just on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is, it makes me much more likely to actually want to look further into it, because it's not just the brand making the very professional looking imagery and content around the product, which is nothing wrong with that, but having the authenticity coming from TikTok and Instagram really just adds to that extra level of marketing, and just gives you an edge in today's market.
Right, and I kind of want to go. So, yeah, I thought Zach like summarized something like really nicely, and it was just like how are you communicating, how are you messaging with your customers, your audience, and especially on TikTok. And what we discussed for a bit in session 1 on automation was that how like the human element of creative and like the human element behind the messaging that you can put out. I mean, that's all you can't really quite automate that, and that's very integral. So in terms of what you're seeing on TikTok and Instagram in terms of like the creative being used, videos, GIFs, UGC, things like that. What are y'all seeing, and like what has y'all's experience been with building out new forms of creative to resonate a little bit more and more effectively with the audience that you're reaching out to? I know it's a mouthful, but if Carolyn, maybe if you want to kick us off here.
All right. Sorry, repeat that question for me. I was trying to also respond in the chat there.
Oh, I see. Sorry. So really just what have you seen in terms of like the creative you've seen on TikTok, Instagram, creative, so to speak, like, and especially in terms of, building messages that resonate with that younger demographic, or more likely the younger demographic,
Well, I think Andreas and Zach have expressed it perfectly. You want the content to be authentic and genuine and relevant, not just for the audience, but also for the creator. Like, I think we're seeing TikTok creative perform really well on Facebook and Instagram as well, because I think it's both authentic, and it also generally has like strong hooks. It's fast paced, it's catchy, and often trending. I think many brands fall into the danger of trying to chase trends, and be really prescriptive in the content that they're getting from those content creators. The relationships I've seen work best, and the content that has worked best for us, is where you provide product to great content creators and have them do what they do best,
Right.
and make authentic creative. I think it's really tough if you go, to someone who's a great content creator on TikTok and are really prescriptive about what you want from them. I don't think that, comes across. I don't think that works as well as, these other pieces.
Right. Zach, you want to hop in?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that. I love when we're able to, as marketers, like Caroline said, allow for the value that these content creators provide to the brand. I mean, they're looking at things through a different lens. They understand the audience. So really, don't box them in. Think about this almost like a free focus group. I love thinking of social media like that. So when you do a ad, don't have those expectations to instantly see conversions. Go and look at the engagements, go gather information around what were the comments. Were people excited? Were they asking questions? Is this driving people to the website? That ultimately will help you refine like your on-site messaging that'll really help control a possible conversion opportunity. It'll help you with your email flow content. You really have to take a step back and allow yourself to data gather at this point. If the conversions come, to me, that's icing on the cake. But knowing that these content creators already have it dialed in, they understand their audience, they know what to talk about, they understand that the audience isn't probably here more for the product, they're here for that experience. What is that product experience for me in my age group? That experience even includes things like buy now, pay later, and how these content creators understand that they need to connect those people. They need to, like Andre said, talk about reviews, talk about what other people's experiences were. I love when people weave that stuff into the content creation there on those platforms.
Right. exactly. And I think that's actually a pretty good segue into actually just the tech solutions outside of Instagram and TikTok, ways to integrate with them, ways to really take advantage of them. Andres, do you want to hop in there and what's happening in the tech side of this, how to play into it?
Yeah, of course. So obviously, in our current age, tech integrations are becoming more and more integrated with one another. So it creates some unique ways to kind of both gather and market some of that content and UGC that you're getting from your customers. So, some examples of what reviews.io is seeing from our own clients is them integrating social media word of mouth, such as mentions or tags on Instagram, or they can even be TikTok posts, and actually gaining permission to use that content. And there's some unique tools around that. We provide our own, but there's even more platforms coming around that allow you to gain permission to use that image, that imagery. And so, for example, they'll leverage that imagery and content by integrating it into their existing marketing platforms. So, for example, if they're running email campaigns through a Klaviyo or through an Omnisend or through an Attentive campaign, and maybe they want to include some of that content or UGC in their emails, they're able to do that very easily. And when we're integrating already into their automated campaigns, that UGC isn't just living on the social media platforms. You want to expand it into other areas. And
Right.
so some of our clients will even include it in their retargeting emails, or like maybe they want to have an abandoned cart email, for example, where they're showcasing some of that social proof of maybe that product that they left abandoned to try to get them in a second time. And that's just some examples of how we've seen it integrated in tech stacks. We also see that same content published directly on the website. There's various different ways of doing this, just to add to that level of authenticity. So we have clients who might showcase imagery from their customers on Instagram on the homepage. Maybe they want to showcase the most popular products that people are posting about. So a newcomer to that website, maybe they don't know what to look for, but they have that gallery there where they can just see, oh, here's what some other people are looking at. Maybe I can go click on this product page and go see what that what that could get me. And in terms of the tech on the tech integration side too, a lot of this content comes obviously post purchase. So we think the easiest way to just integrate it is just in your review collection strategy. When you're gathering that review, having options for the customer to leave photo and video reviews, but having the option, that's okay. We can take it a step further, creating some sort of incentive to leave that content. And so this is especially powerful for brands who might also have a loyalty solution in place, using that loyalty platform to create incentives for photo or video content. We actually have a brand who's incentivizing for people to leave mentions of their Instagram and make posts about how they're using their product. It's actually a home decor brand. So people will take photos of how they're using maybe a flower pot or a wall canvas, whatever it is, and they're getting a massive amounts of content from that, and showcasing that on their website. So that was kind of a mouthful, but various ways of integrating it with your email collection platforms, your marketing platforms, showcasing it on your website, and then just making use of that content.
Right. Actually, Andres, I was just thinking, I think there's like a lot to sort of dive into there and a lot to unpack. And if there were any particular resources or articles or anything that maybe come to mind around this, you definitely feel free to share it into the chat. But
Yeah.
thank you for sort of like the in-depth dive into that. I thought that was really great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to have about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to touch on one last thing around, especially the things that are threatening YouTube, Google, Meta, and especially different conversion rates, testing, and the learning, like how long it takes to learn for a social campaign versus a search campaign. This is a big component of our first session. Like the length and how automation is changing things, and just the testing and learning phase. I think it's much different for these than it is for those. So Carolyn, I was curious if you could sort of just get us jump started there and what you've seen in terms of that learning.
Sure. Yeah, Facebook or Meta talks a lot about the learning phase as being necessary really to, whenever you've got a new ad set or campaign or whenever you make changes, it's sort of resets that learning phase. And so it takes longer really for campaigns or ad sets to get to an optimal stage where they're performing consistently and well. That has definitely been tougher post iOS 14. It takes longer to learn and to really gain momentum, I've found. So where maybe it would have taken 1 week previously, it's 2 weeks. And I find that there's a different sort of learning phase across all platforms. You know, there's some kind of initial ramp up period, and making big changes can affect that. I would say don't cause that to make you tentative about making changes within the account. I found that like creative is the biggest mover of the needle for my clients. So I'm very aggressive about introducing new ads and new creative, and that resets the learning phase. But I found that it produces the biggest sort of 80-20 lift in performance. So, you know, don't just and if you think about the learning phase, you know, TikTok and Meta or Facebook tell you a way to exit the learning phase fastest is to increase your spend to ensure that you get, you know, 50 transactions in a week, or, you know, maybe it was a day, I've forgotten. And of course that is to a degree self-serving. You know, there's a reason they're telling you to be very aggressive with spend. So I would just take it with a grain of salt and think about how it's impacting your decision making. But yes, the learning phase is longer now than it previously was. And so you really have to think about that, especially going into Q4 and your holiday period, which for most clients is the most profitable time of year for them. Make sure you've got well-established audiences going into that time period, you know, ones that are well seasoned and sort of your workhorses for the holiday months.
Okay. That was fantastic. Thank you, Carolyn. So, well, I was going to try and summarize that, but I don't think I can effectively. I think I really, really loved your answer. Zach or Andreas, do y'all have any thoughts there before we hop into our final section here?
You know, I really like what Caroline said. I think having that defined audience, anticipating that, you know, you will need to have an increase in ad spend. So if you're, you know, speaking with your account, and, you know, it's always a tough thing to inform them that, hey, we're going to need to increase ad spend to increase our opportunities, is never an easy ask. But if they understand why, and you've set those expectations, what I would say early on in the relationship, and let them know when we're entering Q4, there will be that ask. If you, the client, or the account is looking for an increase in your conversion opportunities and your numbers, I think that'll speak volumes. And it's just a smart business decision to allocate those funds for that period, as the competition is that much more fierce. And those ad platforms know that, you know, so be prepared for that. Be prepared for that conversation, but also be prepared to provide those results. And it doesn't, like we said, always have to be about conversions. Look for other opportunities to speak to engagements, increase in site traffic. That was all, you know, driven from your ads. So help people understand the variety and varied results.
Awesome. Exactly. Sweet. We have just a couple minutes left here, so I wanted to go into our final topic for that, and that's just the 2022 holiday season. Excuse me. We touched on this in the previous session as well, and so for this, I wanted to just ask y'all two things. One, key learnings from last year. What did you see? You know, and then how is that informing your decision making for this year? And then second, maybe just like one quick actionable tip, or just one core thing that they should really keep in mind. You know, so something you've learned, what you've been seeing, and then what's one thing they should really hone in on, focus on, as we are about a month away from Q4. And as was well said on the previous session, if you're starting now, it's too late. But let's dive into the past. And so, Ken, actually, do you want to start us off again?
Sure. Yeah. I think last year we really learned, I mean, CPMs were sky high. I would expect the same thing to happen this year, this Q4. You know, your cost of delivery is going to be higher than ever. And with iOS 14, that means some remarketing audiences may now be almost unprofitable to pursue in Q4, because if you take into account that CPM, that cost, you may have to achieve a click-through rate or a conversion rate that just isn't achievable. So I would say going into Q4, have plenty of remarketing audiences built out and ready to go to test to determine what is going to be profitable for you and feasible during that time. So, and particularly make sure you have that, what I sometimes call that middle of funnel remarketing audience. So that's your on-platform engagers. So people who have engaged with, you know, a post or an ad, have viewed a certain number of seconds of your ads, or like your video viewer audiences, all those audiences that are unaffected by iOS 14. So the ones that happen on, you know, Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, they having a good like base of those going into Q4 will be really important. And just be prepared to test and, you know, kill an audience if you just look and you go, I'm never going to back into a reasonable CAC or ROAS based on the click-through rate or conversion rate.
Awesome. Yeah, in writing, like there's like a don't be afraid to kill your babies, which means don't be afraid to, you know, kill your best ideas when this doesn't work. It's not, look at the data, look what's happening, and this, look at the data, look what's happening, and you have to be okay with that. Thank you, Carolyn. Perfect. And Andreas.
Yeah. So what I can share from like our perspective is going into Q4, obviously you're going to be doing more ad spend. A lot of Google Shopping PLAs and Google text ads often are used during this time too. And just, we always recommend to our clients like to have some kind of reviews in place, because you can leverage those within the ads that you're using for Google Shopping PLAs or for Google text ads. Just displaying that review data in those ads in Google search actually helps improve your conversions. The increase in conversions we see is roughly around 30% increase. And when you have reviews tied to those ad campaigns, it actually reduces your cost per click as well. And even if maybe you don't have a lot of reviews already, that can, you know, help you with those types of ads, it's the best time to collect anyway, because you're most likely going to have an increase in the amount of orders that are coming in, which leads to an easier opportunity to collect reviews. And then that kind of ties back to collecting UGC as well. It gives you more opportunities to collect, you know, photo and video review content, or just social media content from Instagram and TikTok.
That's I would say UGC is one of the most consistent answers I hear. Really, I feel like across the board, everyone that uses UGC sees results almost immediately, and just that whole community thing is fantastic. Thank you, Andres. Sweet. And then Zach, why don't you round us out?
Yeah, and with this, what we found last year was that 42% of all consumers said they'd be willing to engage with the new brand if discounts and incentives were offered. That's huge, right? We're talking about entry-level purchase, but when you come back to thinking about how you'll connect that with your ad spend, make sure that your ads are providing that content around what that incentive is. And then when visitors land, they immediately see that that incentive is present. That's going to be huge to keep people on the site, to make sure that those pieces connected, something that intrigued me enough to click on your ad. If that same information or similar information is not provided, I'm leaving your site and I'm never coming back, because I feel a little bit of that bait and switch. So remember to also think about where those links are sending people. Are we landing on the product that we see for our account that's seeing the highest first-time conversions? Maybe that's a great test to run. So think about those type of things while including incentives. And when your brands come back to you and say, we don't have margins for incentives, that's where you need to have that difficult conversation and help them understand, we just need to get people to the site. If this is the carrot on the stick that leads them there, at that point, maybe we can direct them to higher priced items that they can use this incentive on. But understand, your competitors know incentives work, and that's going to hurt us if we don't lead our way. Back to what the data showed from last year.
Data. Thank you so much, Zach. That was a great answer. And I think that was a great way to capstone this panel session. Thank you very much, Andres, Zach, Carolyn, for joining us today. I appreciate y'all coming out, giving y'all's insight, and to everyone in the audience, thank y'all for coming. And just one last quick note, the recording of this will be sent out tomorrow, and along with more information about each of our panelists. So if you have more questions, you want to reach out again with your questions, I'll include all that information in that email tomorrow. So just stay tuned there. And our panelists, if you want to say a quick bye, I'll close this out. Cool. All right.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Take care, everybody.
See y'all.
Bye.
Best of luck in Q4.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. Bye.